Welcome to Laura's View and Tarot 2. I have another viewer spotlight for you today. And with us today is a fellow awake soul and interesting individual. His name is Jeff Maziarek. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Laura. I'm honored to be on your show. I've enjoyed it since the moment I discovered it.
Well, when did you discover my YouTube channel?
Let me think back. I had discovered a woman named Linda Paris, who you are very familiar with, I think maybe a year and a half or so ago on Rumble. And then she was referencing a channel on BitChute called Blue Water. And so I would occasionally check that channel to see if there was anything interesting there, and was always checking Linda's channel as well. And then the one day, I don't know what the timing is, you may remember exactly when, Blue Water chose to feature a video from one Laura Greenwood and Laura's View and Tarot 2. And I tuned into it, and ever since then, I watch everything that you do, young lady. It's really, it's wonderful content. Well, it's wonderful content because you're so authentic. There's no pretenses. You're trying to be of service. You're just such a decent human being. And there's so many grifters out there on the different channels. And you look at that and you think, God, how do I sort through all this? And then you find those people that you resonate with, and one of them was you. And so I'm grateful for your work and honor you for your work, because I know that it's a job, but it's a job you're doing out of love, but it's still a job. You have to commit to it, and you have to take the time to do this work. So thank you for doing the work.
Oh, it's a joy. It is. It's nice to be my age and feel useful and know that I'm contributing to at least a few people, their ability to keep a smile on their face and keep looking to the future instead of, thinking about negative things that we can't change. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Jeff, okay?
Okay, I live in the Midwest near a large city. I'm 66 years old, and I've been self-employed for almost 30 years. I did a couple of startup companies in technology in the late 80s. And unfortunately, I was not one of the Silicon Valley millionaires, but I just kept moving forward and carved a niche doing some work as a technical writer. And I'm blessed to have good clients over the years. And it's an interesting life when you go off the beaten path of the corporate America thing. But I don't regret any of it. And I also wrote a couple of books along the way. And that was an interesting experience, and they still exist, but I don't really focus much on them. I figured this way, they have their own incarnations. They were born and they're off doing their thing. And sometimes I hear from people who read them and they say wonderful things. And every once in a while, I'll hear something, a comment on Amazon from someone who doesn't like them. And that's just part of the balance of life,
So Jeff, what led you to a path of spiritual growth? I mean, especially with a techie type of background.
Well, it really branched off of the two startup companies. I had a bad experience. Well, neither of them were, whatever the word success means, neither of them became what they were supposed to become, according to my definition. Tell God your plans, watch it laugh. In any event, I found myself kind of at a stage in life where early 30s, and for the first time had experienced a major setback, and really was, kind of questioning everything about life. What was this about? And rather than go off the deep end and into the, blaming Bobby world, oh, if only they wouldn't have, somehow spirituality became the focus. I think the first book I read was something called You Can Have It All, an obscure book by a guy named Arnold Patton, but it taught me some things that were really vital. And then from there, I launched into other books, and then it became kind of a big focus for me, and it has been. And that I've been doing this spiritual path for a long time. And my experience with it is, once you're on it, you really can't get off, because you know too much. And it doesn't mean that you know so much that you know more than anybody else, you know more than traditional anything, religion, whatever practice, but that you're just not going to fall into line of an old belief system anymore because you've devoured new information and become a different person because of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that resonates with me because that would be the same thing here. At some point, you just think, ooh, some of these topics are uncomfortable, but I don't want to pretend like I don't know them anymore. I'm not going to stick my head in the sand. Now, I know you mentioned you're a technical writer, that's your vocation, but you've also done some writing, some daily blogs for quite a while that was called Ponder on This. Would you tell us a little more about that? Especially since what I can't spotlight are the services that you and sites and information that my viewers can look at no charge. And this would be one of them.
Yeah, basically, I think in the late 90s, a friend of mine was sending out daily, like inspirational messages she had a list of maybe, I don't know, 50, no, like 100 people or something. So I was one of them. And they were just so cliche. And I, like, if you believe, you can achieve. And it's like, oh, thanks. Wow, I never heard that before. And so I cynically wrote her an email and said, okay, is there anything else you could recommend? And she said, okay, smarty pants, why don't you just, go ahead and, make up your own. So, okay, it's fine. So then I got to be thinking about it, and I'm not going to move the webcam, but I have a bookshelf with, it used to be even larger with number of spirituality books that I've read over the years. So I started this idea of Ponder on This, which actually is a book. I didn't even know this, but it was a book written by some woman named Alice Bailey back in the early 1900s, apparently. And it was just, the idea was to do a one or two paragraph excerpt from one of these books, give full attribution, make no money off of it because it's not my work, it's somebody else's work, but include links to Amazon to facilitate if somebody goes, oh, that looks like a cool book. They could link through it. I didn't even have, Amazon wasn't paying me for the link. Because again, I get one out of it. I live in a world of integrity, and you can't sell somebody else's stuff. It's not yours, but you can share information. And so I kind of took it as an avocation of, I'm going to do this Ponder on This thing. And the list initially, some of them came from this woman. And then over the years, it built up to several hundred people all over the world were subscribing to it, still do. And it became something, well, once I started it, okay, initially I would type in 2 or 3 a week. Well, there are 5 days, I would do weekdays, but I would type in all 5, it was a lot of time. And then over time, it switched to 3 days a week for fresh and then recycle the older ones. And now it's in its 24th year. So the only thing that you see if you go to that website, pondercentral.com, is you see best of Ponder on This. So that's how long I've been doing it, and everything's free about it because ethically can't charge for it. So I pay for the web hosting, and I still have to manually put them out there, not type in anymore, but I still have to get the blog set up and for auto load and auto delivery and stuff. So it takes a bit of time each year to do it, but I'm heading towards the 25th year, so I got to keep doing it, That's how I feel about it. So
what can you tell us about your pondercentral.com website? This is it, what you're talking about. Are there more layers to it or anything you want to add to that?
Just one thing, which is if you want to treat it as, just a clarification here. I don't track anything on it. I don't look at visitors. This doesn't occur to me. It's just out there. And it has a message every day, Monday through Friday. And then if you look at the nav bar on the right side, you can look and see that it has all kinds of categories, doing what you love, forgiveness, and maybe 50 other categories that the posts from any number of different authors are about those things. Mm-hmm. And then, so if someone said, oh, I'm feeling concerned about this, or I need some inspiration about this, you can just go there and look and say, okay, here's 50 posts about forgiveness. I need to forgive somebody. What can I learn from this? So it's a resource. basically, is what it is. For
That's the
spiritual
word that
growth information.
was in my head when you're talking, was resource. It's a resource, and I have visited it. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, so more people will know about it. I will put a link to that in our description to this video, since
Oh, thank
it
you.
is, there's no charge to visit the site at all. And maybe someone else will find it, a good resource as well. So I have a question for you. Out of all of the information, content, and material that you come across as you were pursuing information and insights about personal spiritual growth, what had the most important impact for you? What really gave you some aha moments?
Okay, well, that's a good question, and we could be on this video a long time, but we're not going to be. Let's just say I've got a couple of things written down here. I'm not going to read them, but I'm going to refer to them. The most important thing that I ever discovered, and Ponder Central didn't really get this to me, but it was part of it. Because if I hadn't started it, I wouldn't have had this interest level that then mushroomed into more and more interests. But back in 1995, a friend of mine, the same woman who, I said to her, this was pre-Ponder Central. She had told me, sorry, so I'm out of historical, ordering here, but she told me that listen to this 4.5 minutes of tape, cassette at the time, from Father Anthony DeMello, a deceased Catholic priest who used to teach at Fordham University, and he had a spiritual center in India. Very much known as a renegade priest. Several books allegedly, I heard, were banned by the Vatican, so that made me like him automatically. In any way, shape, or form, the 5 minutes of tape was just so pivotal to, I don't know, I'm sure, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, to anyone who winds up listening to this, if you can think of a time in your life where your whole, it was a shift. You're like, oh, wait, I never looked at it that way before. And so DeMello had this 4.5 minutes was about what does it mean to be a success? If we had 45 minutes, I would read the thing to you. But just, I'm going to read a little bit of this because it like absolutely slapped me in the face. Said, what are you genuinely worried about? Ordinarily, you're worried about what's going to happen to your career. A businessman, 55 years old, is sipping beer at a bar, and he's thinking, look at my classmates, they've made it. They've really made it. The idiot, they've made it. What do you mean they made it? They got their names in the newspapers? You call that made it? They got their names in the prison journal that all the prisoners are reading? He thinks they made it. So it's like my view at the time of success and was tied into that whole thing of acknowledgement, external acknowledgement. If you get your name here, if you're on television, and it just changed me. It just brought me a depth of perspective. And I have a link I can share with you at some point. I don't know I don't have it memorized, but it's on my spiritsimple.com site where I have a link to the audio of DeMello's speech. It's like the 4.5 minute thing. But there's a part at the end where he says, the main preoccupation of society is to keep society sick. And the sooner you realize it, the better. Every one of them, they're loony, they're crazy. You became president of the lunatic asylum and you're proud of it. It means nothing. Now, that's not to denigrate anyone who's had success as the world defines it, who does things from the heart and has created something really good that helps maybe employ hundreds, if not thousands of people. But the point is not buying into your identity is that. Who you are is not that. You are so much greater than that. That's a role you play in your life, one of many roles. So I don't know how much time we have, but I put a lot of time into that because that was the most important thing I'd ever heard. And then once I was into Ponder Central, I think other things really impacted me, like the work of Stuart Wilde, who was very, very much kind of a controversial metaphysical book author. He said things that pissed people off, that aggravated people, that, he did not always make friends, but he was authentic. And I enjoyed Stewie because at least I always knew that I was getting the raw thing. I wasn't getting some fakeness. I was getting like a Laura Greenwood, no pretense. This is who I am, okay? And so from Stuart Wilde, I learned that you don't You don't go out and wake anybody up. You don't go out and teach anybody anything unless they ask you. They ask you a question, and then you can share with them. But anything other than that is kind of, in a sense, an egoistic thing of doing, I'm right, I need to tell you this is the truth, you're seeing it all wrong. And we all have that feeling at times, but it's so vital to realize that God or spirit, everything is in divine order. When someone's ready to hear a certain amount of information or type of information, it'll become apparent. If they're not, you don't help them at all by trying to force your viewpoint on them. And I know that's kind of a controversial thing to say these day and age when we talk about people waking up and not waking up. But I just saw Stuart Wilde as such an important teacher for me. He died 10 years ago in May. But I still think about him. So, but that's two things. I don't know if you want me to share one more, I can do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's up to you.
As you were doing that, I was thinking about how if you raise poultry, you're not supposed to help the chicks hatch. They have to do it themselves. If you start helping them peel back the shell, it's not, you might think you're helping, but you're not helping them. And I sometimes think as people waking up, they have to make the first cracks and let us know. You know, we can't go cracking that shell or pulling it away from them. It's not going to be a good result.
Right, and I know what your audience is like in the sense of that in their heart of hearts, they want to help. They want to spread that light. And it really comes down to a situation of discernment. And you just learn that like riding your bicycle. And you're going to make some mistakes and maybe you share too much sometimes. But as long as your intention is in the purity of doing it for the good of the whole, not I'm just doing this because I need to show that I know this. No, it all comes down to the intent. So with that said, one of the things that I've lived by for a long time now since I discovered, and you said, what other things that I learned that affect my, from Ponder Central? I read a book called The Quest back in 2000 or something. That wasn't some big, huge, successful book, but it had a lot of good stuff in there. I think Unity Church might have been the publisher involved in it somehow. But there was Richard and Mary Alice Jafala, and there's one thing in there that really struck me, and that is, and I'm guessing, Laura, you would have heard this, not maybe this quote, but this idea of the words I am, how powerful those words are. And so in this book, they say, if you want to feel the power of the words I am, substitute the words, it is my essence to be, or it is my nature to be. Now forward that to the next thing. When you hear somebody say, I'm such a klutz, really? Is it your essence to be a klutz? Is it your very nature to be a klutz? Is it your very nature to be a Democrat or a Republican? No, that's not. So be careful. That's what I learned. I'm not trying to stand on the pulpit here. That's what I learned. I don't say I am in front of anything I don't want to experience, because that's God. That's the I am, breathe life into the universe. I'm not messing with that power, not in a negative way. And when you see people and how they misuse it, it makes me sad sometimes, but I do my best to witness it, and I wish them better, that they come to the awareness that they're claiming it when they say that. Do you claim that you want to have this back? Okay, get a little animated about it, but it's just such a powerful thing,
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it really makes sense. It does, because where our focus is, that's where our attention goes. That's where, it comes back at us. So yeah, it's important what we focus on and what our intentions are. They are very powerful creative forces. So we need to make sure they're creating good things. I have one last question for you. We've had quite a lot of email exchanges and stuff, and I know from those that you consider yourself to be red-pilled, politically awake to some of the shenanigans in life. And can you tell us a little bit about how that process happened for you? How did you get red-pilled?
Well, you know what? Before I answer that, I'm going to insert one other thing to the I am, which is another quote I heard someone wrote one time. Do not speak what you do not want. Do not. Because what do we hear the last 3 years? Things have to get worse before they get better. No, no, no. I just, every time I hear that, no, is that your truth? Is that what you're trying to project and create? That's not mine.
Yeah.
You know, go to the Wayne's world. Take it back. Take your power back. Too much power given away to somebody else's idea. Take that power back. So now, thank you for indulging that little bit extra. Now, as far as the red pill thing, I actually never watched that whole movie, The Matrix. And lately, I don't even want to watch anything where there's violence. It's just not that much of a pacifist, but I just don't, I'm not resonating with it. Okay, back in 1994, I read a book by Stuart Wilde called Whispering Winds of Change, which didn't become some huge bestseller, and it had a lot of controversial stuff in there. And he referred to a British author whose name is David, and his last name begins with an I, and I'm just going to leave it at that. And he wrote a book about, I'm not going to paraphrase the name, something about the truth sets you free. And it was like 350 pages, maybe more. I read the whole thing. Completely, absolutely shifted my entire view of everything that we see that happens around us, that we think is true. Completely changed it. So that was what, 20, I don't know, do the math, 94. So 25, is that almost 30 years ago? It came upon that. So that's how I discovered it. And now, and you and I have talked about this in email, it's like, once you have that level of awareness, and like, I think Ike speaks, I said his name.
That's okay.
That's okay. And I haven't read anything ever again that he wrote, but I read that book 30 years ago almost. But two things that just strike me from him: follow the money, right? Who benefits? So when you see a floppy thing that you referred to, in the past, okay? Two questions, those two questions. And you may not have the answers, but that's the discernment within you that goes, wait a minute. What happened because of certain things that happened? What did that thing do? Who benefited? And we could go on and on about this. So
yeah. So that was kind of where that path opened for you. That's interesting. I personally have not read everything that last author you mentioned read, but there's a huge difference between the early works, which I would highly recommend, and the later ones that I have kind of looked at. So yeah, I do think the early ones do a really nice job of helping people start that path of awakening and some awareness, very much so. But something happened in the middle there, so I recommend towards the earlier part in the writing career.
Oh no, I completely agree. It's gone to a different direction, and whenever we have things that make us feel a little queasy when we hear it, it's like no, not going to give. This is, if I have one last thing I can say, it's this to anybody, and this goes to me, and I remind myself of this every day: stop giving your power away to outside authority without asking questions internally. Does this feel right to me? Does this make sense to me? It's too easy. People will fill the vacuum. As soon as you are willing to give that power away, somebody's here to take it.
Yeah.
You just got, got to be strong. You got, draw the line in the sand. No.
Yeah. And sometimes give yourself permission to turn things off. Even this video, give yourself permission to turn things off. If you start hearing something go, that's not something I want to see happen in my reality. I can think of people that have used that phrase, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I turned it off. I thought, nope, this message
Mhm.
isn't for me. That may be what happens,
Right.
but that's not where I'm going to put my energy or my focus, period.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Jeff, this has been fabulous getting to know you a little better. And like I said, I'll put a link to your pondercentral.com website in the description here. And people can see if that's a resource tool that helps them navigate some of the issues that we're dealing with as we wake up and just try to live in this crazy, complicated time that we're in. So thank you again for being with us. I do appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Laura, for the opportunity. It's fun. It's fun to talk. I feel like we're friends now after this, and hopefully we can talk again sometime.
I'd love that. And it's always nice to put a face and a voice with, the communication. It just adds that
Right.
better dimensional layer. So anyway, that's it for this video from Laura's View and Terra 2. We thank you for your time and don't take it for granted, and wish you love and light and all things good as you go about your day, and we enjoy this gift of life. Thank you.